The day it happened, the sky was a dull gray, the kind that makes you feel like the whole world has decided to give up on sunshine. I had just come from school, my backpack heavier than usual, not because of homework, but because I'd borrowed 2 novels from the library, the kind of books that let you forget who you are for a while. Our house wasn't big, but it had always been loud. Pots clanging in the kitchen, my mother's voice shouting at me to pick up my shoes, the television blasting cartoons from my younger half-brother. But that afternoon, the air was still. Too still. When I stepped into the living room, the first thing I noticed were the 2 black garbage bags by the door. My mind didn't process them at first. I thought maybe they were filled with old clothes for donation. Then I saw my own jacket sleeve hanging out from one. I looked toward the kitchen. My mother was standing there with her hands gripping the counter, her belly swollen under a faded blue dress. She was pregnant again. The smell of chicken stew drifted from the stove, but the warmth of the food didn't match the frost in her eyes. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Her husband, Joran, walked in from the hallway carrying his 2-year-old son, my half-brother. The toddler was crying, but it wasn't a soft cry. It was the kind of loud, demanding wail that made everyone stop what they were doing. Joran didn't look at me. He just bounced the boy and stared at my mother. Waiting for her to speak, she took a breath and said, "It's time you found your own way." For a moment, I thought she was joking. I even laughed, a short, nervous laugh that died quickly when I saw she wasn't smiling. "What do you mean?" "You're 16, she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You're old enough to take care of yourself. We need the space for the new baby." The words didn't make sense. My ears were ringing. "The new baby?" I repeated, as if saying it out loud would make this a bad dream. Joran finally spoke, his tone flat. "You're not a child anymore. We can't keep feeding and housing you when we've got more important responsibilities now." "More important responsibilities?" My voice cracked. "I'm your daughter." My mother's gaze darted away from mine. She reached for the pot on the stove and stirred it, as though the conversation was over. As though I wasn't standing there with my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. She picked up an envelope from the counter and held it out to me. "This will help you for now," she said. I took it with numb fingers. Inside was a $20 bill. $20. That was the price of 16 years of my life in her care. "You can stay with a friend," she said quickly, as if hurrying to end the conversation. "It'll be better for everyone this way." My throat was dry, but my mind was screaming 1,000 things I wanted to say. How I had watched her cry when Dad left us. How I had cooked dinners at 12 years old when she was too tired from work. How I had looked after my little brother so she could go out with Joran before they were even married. How I had been there for her when no one else was, but none of that seemed to matter to her anymore. Joran put the toddler down, and the boy ran toward my mother. She crouched and kissed the top of his head, the soft tenderness in her eyes like a knife to my chest. I couldn't remember the last time she had looked at me that way. "I don't understand," I whispered. Her voice softened for a moment. "You will one day," I wanted to yell. I wanted to smash the pot of chicken stew just to make her look at me the way she used to. But instead, I walked to the garbage bags and picked them up. They were heavier than I expected, the plastic digging into my hands. As I opened the door, she said, "Don't make this harder than it is." I stopped in the doorway, rain pattering against the porch roof. My sneakers were already getting wet, and the weight of the bags made my shoulders ache. "You already made it harder than it could ever be," I said without turning around. I stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind me. No hug, no goodbye, no promise to call. I walked to the end of the street, my jeans soaking through in the rain. Every step felt like I was walking deeper into a life I wasn't ready for. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night. I didn't know how I'd eat when the $20 ran out. All I knew was that I no longer had a home. And yet, even in that moment, with my hair dripping and my heart breaking, a single thought kept repeating in my mind: I will never forget this day, and I will never let her see me beg to come back. That was the day. I stopped being her daughter. The first weeks after my mother threw me out were a blur. Stayed at my friend Mariah's place, a cramped basement that smelled faintly of damp laundry and instant noodles. She and her mom didn't have much, but they gave me a mattress in the corner and a plate at the table that night. Lying on that thin mattress, I'd stare at the cracked ceiling and replay my mother's words in my head. We need the space for the new baby. It wasn't just the words. It was how easily she said them, as if she were talking about moving a piece of furniture out of the way. Mariah's mom, Mrs. Lee, didn't ask for details. She just slid me an extra piece of toast in the mornings, and sometimes tucked a $5 bill into my hand. For lunch, she'd say, pretending it wasn't charity. But I knew I couldn't live off her kindness forever. By the second week, I was walking door to door in the strip mall, asking if anyone needed part-time help. Most store owners looked me up and down, saw a 16-year-old in worn sneakers, and said they weren't hiring. But at a diner on 4th Street, a tired-looking manager named Ron finally said, "We could use someone to wash dishes." It paid. Barely enough for bus fare and cheap groceries, but it was something. The hustle years, the months that followed, were a grind. I worked the evening shift at the diner, then took whatever odd jobs I could find, mowing lawns, cleaning out garages, babysitting kids who had no idea they were richer than me. School became a side mission, something I squeezed in between shifts. I stopped caring about popularity. I didn't have time to hang out at the mall or go to football games. My friends drifted away, one by one, until only Maria stuck around. The worst part wasn't hunger or exhaustion. It was seeing my mother sometimes in town, pushing a stroller with Joran by her side. She'd glance at me like I was a stranger, then keep walking. I never approached her. Pride kept my feet rooted to the ground. One rainy afternoon, when business was slow at the diner, I found an old laptop someone had left in the lost and found box for months. The manager let me have it. It barely worked, but it connected to the library's Wi-Fi. That laptop became my escape. At first, I just watched random videos, cooking tutorials, old sitcom episodes, motivational speeches from people in suits. But one night I stumbled across a free online coding course. I didn't even know what coding was, but the idea that I could make something that lived on the internet fascinated me. Learning in the shadows. I'd come home from my dishwashing shift at midnight, take a quick shower, and sit cross-legged on that mattress in the basement with the laptop balanced on my knees. I learned about HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript. It was frustrating. The screen froze constantly, my fingers ached, and sometimes my eyes burned so bad from staring at the screen that I had to lie down. But little by little, the strange symbols started to make sense. When I built my first simple website, just a page with a picture of a cat and some text, I felt a spark. I realized something. Knowledge was free if you knew where to look. And if I could teach myself this, I could teach myself anything. By 18, I was doing small freelance jobs, setting up websites for local businesses, fixing formatting for online stores. The money wasn't huge, but it was enough to move out of the basement and rent a tiny studio apartment. It was the first place. I could lock the door and know no one could throw me out. The breakthrough at 19, I took a risk. One of my clients ran a food truck and complained that he couldn't keep track of orders during the lunch rush. I told him I could build him an app to manage it. He looked at me skeptically. You're just a kid." "Yeah," I said, "but I'm a kid who can solve your problem." It took me 3 months of sleepless nights, coffee, and trial and error. Coding, But when I handed him that app, he paid me more money than I had ever seen in my life, $2,000. That app became my portfolio piece. Word spread, and soon other small businesses wanted apps too. By 21, I'd officially registered my own company. I hired 2 friends from my online coding community. We worked out of my apartment at first, then moved into a shared office space. The growth was slow at first, but once we landed our first corporate client, a regional restaurant chain, the revenue tripled in a year. By 28, my company had offices in 3 countries. I was invited to speak at tech conferences. I had more money than I knew what to do with. I bought a sleek black car that made people turn their heads. I owned 3 houses, though I spent most of my time in the one overlooking the ocean. And through it all, I never once called my mother. The quiet victory success didn't feel the way I thought it would. I wasn't jumping for joy or popping champagne. It was quieter than that, a calm satisfaction that I had built something from nothing, but there was another part of me that kept imagining the day she'd find out. I pictured her shock, her regret, maybe even an apology. I didn't know that day would come sooner than I expected. One Thursday afternoon, I was in my home office signing contracts when my security guard buzzed me. "Sir, there's someone here." "To see you," he said. I almost told him to send them away until he added, "She says she's your mother." I froze. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. My mother? After 12 years of silence? "Send her in," I said. And just like that, the past I thought I'd left behind was about to walk through my door. The sound of her footsteps on the fasta marble floor didn't match the woman I remembered. They were slower, heavier, almost uncertain. But when my mother stepped into the room, the look in her eyes was the same one I'd seen the day she told me to leave. Calculating, measuring, deciding how much she could get from me before I caught on. Time had changed her face. The lines were deeper, the hair thinner and streaked with gray, but there was no mistaking her. She stood in my foyer, dripping from the rain, clutching a worn leather handbag that looked like it had been mended more than once. "Hello," she said. No smile, no hug. Just hello, as if we bumped into each other at a grocery store after a few weeks apart instead of 12 years. I didn't move from where I stood behind my desk. "What do you want?" My voice came out colder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. Her eyes flicked around the room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the ocean view, the polished stone floors. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "Like it?" Was an accusation instead of a compliment. "You didn't answer my question." She sighed, walking farther inside without waiting for an invitation. "I'm here because we need help." We. I knew instantly she wasn't just talking about herself. She set her bag down on a chair and started talking fast. Like if she got all the words out before I interrupted, I'd have less chance to say no. "Your little brothers are in high school now. College is expensive. And the house needs repairs. The roof leaks every time it rains. Joran's been out of work for months. We're barely getting by." And then I thought, well, you're doing so well. You could help us. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. "You threw me out at 16 so you could have more space for your real family," I said slowly. "Now you want me to help that same family?" Her face tightened. "Don't make this about the past. I did what I had to do." I pushed back from my desk and stood. "You did what was easiest for you. There's a difference." Her voice sharpened. "Do you think I wanted to send you away? You were difficult. Always questioning things, always making it hard for me and Joran. We had a baby to think about. And you were almost an adult. Almost," I cut in. "But not enough to survive on my own without begging for food or sleeping in a basement. Did you ever once wonder how I was eating? Or if I was safe?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, her lips pressed tight, like my pain was an inconvenience to the conversation she wanted to have. I walked around the desk and stood in front of her. Tell me something, Mom. When you were rocking your new baby to sleep at night, did it ever cross your mind that your firstborn was washing dishes in a diner for minimum wage? She flinched, but only for a second. I thought you'd be fine. You've always been strong. I almost choked on the words. You don't get to abandon someone and then call them strong for surviving. She shifted in her seat, avoiding my gaze. I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for your brothers. They didn't do anything to you. And I didn't do anything to them, I said. I don't owe them a single thing. Her tone hardened. So you're just going to turn your back on family? I let out a humorless laugh. Family? You taught me that family is conditional. You taught me that love can be replaced when it's inconvenient. And now you want me to pretend those lessons don't exist? She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. I built this life without you. Every dollar I've earned, every door I've opened. Every night I stayed up learning something new instead of sleeping, I did that alone. You don't get to walk in here and claim a share because we happen to share DNA. The silence stretched between us. Rain pattered softly against the glass. Finally, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Her eyes lit up like she thought she'd won. But when I handed it to her, she noticed how light it was. She opened it and pulled out a single sheet of paper. On it, in neat black ink, I'd written, "Family is built on love, not blood, and you taught me that the hard way." She stared at it, her face draining of color. "That's it?" She whispered. "That's it." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but no words came. She shoved the paper back into the envelope, grabbed her bag, and stood. For a moment, I thought she might try one last guilt trip, a reminder that she'd given birth to me, raised me as best she could, something to make herself feel better about the person she'd become. But instead, she just said, "You'll regret this one day." I met her eyes. "No, I regretted trusting you once. I won't make that mistake again." She turned and walked out, her footsteps fading down the hallway until the front door closed with a hollow click. I stood there for a long time, staring at the envelope in her hand as she disappeared into the rain. My chest felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time since I was 16, I realized I didn't just survive her. I'd outrun every shadow she tried to leave on me, and I wasn't looking back.